Okay, if we can settle down, we'll start the last session. This next 20 minutes or so kind of came out of an idea. We were chatting one day, and I don't know, I'd been talking to someone. I said, I was chatting to Joe or whatever, I won't pick anybody in particular, about this the other day, and I thought, I wish I was party to that conversation, because it would have been fascinating. So I thought, so who would be two people I'd love to hear have a conversation? And we end up with these two lovely people here beside me, Claire and Miranda, because I think...
You couldn't get the ones that you wanted. And
How
you
could you
expect
think
me to stay within a 20-minute time frame. Could do 20 minutes and
Well, you know, we'll give it a go. But I think it's one of those things that, you know, the joys of networking, we've all started enjoying coming back to in-person events. It is those chance conversations sometimes that just makes you think a little bit differently about, oh, that's how they see it. Whereas when you see it reported, well, why'd they do that? You know. And then we talked about topics and things, and we spent a lot of time, we talked about the Golden Triangle a lot, or the Golden Shackle, as it apparently it should be. But then there's the rest of the UK, and the UK being a cluster, as Mike had pointed out earlier. And I thought then, well, you know, being based in Nottingham, sort of a diamond shape if we stretch it a little bit, as much as the Golden Triangle's a triangle shape at least. So maybe diamonds were better than gold. So I'll leave it to these two ladies to convince us of that, or not. Miranda and Claire, over to you.
Claire, do you want to?
I can. Hi. Thanks very much, Tony, for inviting us to this session. I'm Claire Thompson. I'm Chief Exec of Agility Life Sciences. We're an award-winning formulation development CDMO based in Nottingham. Put the facility there through the pandemic, and I think I'm going to touch on that story in a few moments' time. We work with tiny biotechs to turn their badly behaved molecules, they're all badly behaved, into products that give them the best chance of success in preclinical studies and then can be accelerated onto clinic. Miranda.
And I'm Corporate Development Director of Pioneer Group. Some of you will know me from BioCity, where I started in 2004. That company was acquired about 18 months ago to become Pioneer Group, and we have an integrated model now of science parks right across the UK. So we have about 3.6 million square foot of lab space right across the UK. Now we run we do venture building activities by running accelerators right across the UK, and we're very fortunate to have our own investment fund. So we're currently working with I think we have over 600 life science companies in our portfolio, from the 1-1 bands to multinationals.
Wonderful. And the theme for today, are diamonds better than gold? Yes, diamonds are a girl's best friend, but are they better for the life science sector in the UK than the Golden Triangle? So just to give a bit of scene setting, thankfully the UK is still the #1 destination in Europe for life science capital raising. Long may that continue. Some of the BIA figures are quite striking. So £4.5 billion was raised by UK life science companies in 2021. That was up from, I think, 2.8 billion in 2020, so it's a great trajectory. Can we keep that going? It's quite a lot. I think there's 80% of that is going into the Golden Triangle, so it doesn't seem to be much levelling up from a private investment perspective. Life science has been the focus for the government's industrial strategy. I would question, actually, whether that's still the case, given that what they're doing with R&D tax credits. Putting up barriers after barrier, and we have got a Minister for Science, but they haven't got a cabinet role. So I think it's becoming more difficult. We're in a very strong position, but it is becoming more difficult for us to do business. There are nearly 6,000 life science companies in the UK, turnover of more than £60 billion, and that goes from innovative R&D companies all the way through scale-up, supply chain, service providers, etc. So it's quite a diverse portfolio of companies. There's more than 220,000 people employed in that sector. Even though there is a brain drain, we're certainly feeling that and seeing that within the clients that we work with. Yes, the Golden Triangle is seen as the leading life science cluster in the UK, and it's getting more than its fair share of investment. And the region is home to world-leading academics, clinicians, biotechs, etc. But it's full. London's full, Cambridge is full, Oxford is full. It's not the only place that we can do this sort of work and be innovative and show that on a world stage we're phenomenal within the life science sector. So, Miranda, the Golden Triangle is currently the jewel in the UK's life science economy. I've got very strong feelings about what the life science economy can do for the UK, but there's other clusters forming elsewhere. You know, Nottingham is one. We've got Discovery Park. There's a lot of investment going into Manchester as well, and that's just talking about England. You can tell from my accent and the lack of vowels that I'm from Northern Ireland, so we shouldn't just be thinking about England either. Is there an opportunity for us to expand the triangle? Should we be looking at throwing other shapes? What other gems should UK life science sector be displaying to the world?
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree that the Golden Triangle, it's a precious gem that we should cherish and we should grow, but there is life beyond the Golden Triangle, and outside of the Golden Triangle there are established clusters in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, Manchester, Nottingham that are thriving, down in Kent as well. And then there are emerging clusters such as Darlington, Newcastle, Liverpool, Leeds, Birmingham that are really starting to shine. And I think both these established and emerging clusters have, you know, some really key ingredients for success. So I'm going to be the positive one on this panel, because I do think there's some great things going up and down the country. We've got some fantastic universities, leading universities outside of the Golden Triangle that are attracting great talent, young talent. And you know, a lot of this young talent is really mobile these days, wants to be in city centres. And you know, places like Edinburgh, Manchester, Glasgow, etc., Nottingham are really nice places to live, great quality of life, and the lower cost of living, really. But the other exciting thing I've started to see, especially, you know, with our companies, is that there's actually a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs from the Golden Triangle who've had very successful careers, who are starting to become part of companies up in the north, you know, as chairman, exec directors, etc. And we need more of that. But I think it's, you know, it's a really positive thing and really helping. We've also got a lot of national key assets that are setting up outside the Golden Triangle. So we've seen, you know, ones that are making real impact, like the Medicines Discovery Catapult, Alderley Park, that's at the forefront of drug discovery. There's the Infections Innovation Coalition that's led by the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. There's the National Horizons Discovery Centre in Darlington, and then the newly opened Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Centre in Glasgow that I'm sure, you know, will be a great job. And you do get great clusters of activity coming around these centres. So I think with the universities, the seasoned entrepreneurs, the whole startup activity in these national centres, actually there's quite a lot of support going on outside of the Golden Triangle. And then another thing that is having a positive impact is that many of these clusters that I've just talked about have now devolved their politics within the city regions. So, you know, you've got Manchester, Liverpool, you've got Tees Valley, West Midlands, etc., who have more powers over healthcare, and that, you know, facilitates large scale clinical trials, for example, or changing policy at a local level. So all great things going on, and also, you know, we talk about the Cambridge-Oxford arc, but actually getting from Cambridge to Oxford can, you know, be a bit of a nightmare, where it's pretty easy to get from Manchester to Liverpool or Newcastle to to Leeds or Nottingham to Birmingham. So I do think there's much more movement of people, perhaps in certain parts of the country, whether it's for networking or just finding another job. So it's really good, and we have, of course, the branding of the Northern Powerhouse and the Midlands Engine, which gives real cohesion, I think, to some of these regions, and a real sense of pride, actually. And finally, obviously, I couldn't not mention infrastructure. There are more and more property developers like ourselves, Paya Group, who are, have looked at the Golden Triangle, but actually are also looking beyond that, because they can see that outside of the Golden Triangle, often companies can have a home for life, because they can do the startup, they can do the scale up, they can do the manufacturing, they can do the GMP, you can have your logistics, you can have your warehousing, etc. So I think actually we've got some, really kind of diversified clusters, but perhaps quite balanced clusters, because you've got your therapeutics companies, but you've got they're on the same sites as the contract research organisations or the regulatory companies, the medtech diagnostics. So all that I think makes for enables for much more open collaboration. But anyway, that's enough about my thoughts. Claire, I mean, Claire decided to open a company not only during the pandemic, but
I'm not very wise.
But outside of the Golden Triangle, you set up with us in Nottingham a couple of years ago now. So can you kind of take us through that thought process of why?
Given that I live between London and
Well,
Cambridge.
exactly. You spent most of your professional life living and working
It's
in
my love
in
for
the Golden
driving on the
Triangle.
M11 and the A14.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so we'd been a consulting company for 8 years before then. So managing projects on behalf of biotech companies, outsourcing all of the activities. I was finding it harder and harder to find organisations who had the 3 C's. So had the capability, so the expertise to solve the problems pretty quickly. Had the capacity, so could get projects in and out, so they could do the thinking, they could do the doing and meet the milestones. Milestones don't move, not even in a pandemic. And at the right cost. So from a biotech perspective, it's the milestones that count more than the cost, but the cost, the budgets always have to line up. So I was finding that difficult to find formulation development companies who ticked all of those boxes. And then the pandemic came, and I thought, well, why don't we just do this? If I don't do it, I'm never going to do it. People are calling it a midlife crisis. I think it's just about being plucky. So I managed to. Or mad, either way. It's the jury's still out. So I think the first thing that I did after I'd convinced my VP of development that this was a great idea, 4 ciders, is what it took, 4 strong ciders, was get in touch with Tony and say, do you know of any space that's available in Cambridge? So I was looking at Cambridge or in Nottingham. So my VP of development is in Nottingham. I'm close to Cambridge. So I sent the message to Tony, and although, Tony, I think you were probably about 25 miles away, I could hear you laughing. Laughs, basically. Yeah, there will be in about 9 months to a year's time, and you can have this space here. And at the same time, I contacted Miranda. We've known each other for a number of years through Stevenage connections, and said, okay, is there any space available? And so the first thing was I didn't think I'd find space for 6 months, so I thought, I'd have time to build up to this. Miranda found me space in 3 weeks. When we were in, we got keys. And it was the opportunity, really, to have that space and get us off the ground and do this before I had the time to think, this is a ridiculous idea. Why are you doing this? But the real rationale was around the skills base there. So Nottingham and the area used to be the big hub for Boots, so the manufacturer there. And as Boots got smaller and smaller, that talent base stayed mostly within the region. So it spurred off a number of CROs and CDMOs. So the talent base in Nottingham for formulators and for analysts is phenomenal. I used to work up there myself, and that's where I met some of my team. I've assembled the Avengers again once I've needed to bring them into the company. So really it was the skills base that is there, the access to lab space. Now there's very little between the costs, and we need to talk about costs. Get that on record. There's very little between the costs per square foot in Cambridge or in London or in Nottingham or in Manchester. And there's very little there because there is such a big demand. So it was the accessibility to talent, accessibility to space, not just for now, but the grow-on space as well. I mean, we've now got 4 labs. We've got a much bigger office. We've moved 3 times in 2 years,
Yeah.
and that has been the rapid response to our need for growth has been phenomenal. And you're already looking for us at what that next piece would be, and if we're going to go into GMP manufacturing, how could Pioneer Group accommodate that going forward? So it's kind of the nourish and flourish piece that would allow us to do that. But the last piece really is around the cost of living around the Nottingham area is much lower than it would be in London or in Cambridge. So the salaries are slightly more manageable. But I couldn't get the talent that I need in Cambridge or in London because it's different. It's not the formulation. It's not the analytical. Around about Cambridge and London, it's much more hardcore biology, bioinformatics, chemistry. More the software design, etc. So it's the skill set piece. And for me, I think that the Midlands is terrible at banging the drum and telling its story. And I want to pose this question to you in a minute, Miranda. So I'll give you some thinking time about whether having the Northern powerhouse and having the Midlands engine and having the Golden Triangle is actually helping to fragment rather than cement the optics of a UK life science on a global stage. What I think the Midlands needs is, it's phenomenal at these outsourced activities. So for CDMOs, for CROs, whether it's drug discovery, high throughput screening, preclinical testing, developing the products that we do, clinical trials, supply chain pieces. You've got Signature Discovery there. You've got Almac. Quotient Sciences, you've got much smaller players in there as well, and there's a number of preclinical houses as well. It's all there. It's all within, 20-mile radius. Why are we not banging the drum about this? I think we need Midlands Medicines Manufacturing Master Plan, because medicines don't get made without outsourcing so many of these activities, and the Midlands is a real hub for that. I think that's what's needed for the region. I think that is what is needed to go to number 10, to go to number 11 as part of the levelling up agenda. And I will bore people silly about this because it doesn't bang the drum enough about the impact that it has, not just on the region, but the UK and on a global stage. So I'm going to throw it back to you. What do you think makes a successful super cluster? If we're calling this point of the diamond a super cluster, and actually by calling them these different regions, are we fragmenting this rather than cementing it?
I do think it is going back to that skill set and looking. Every ecosystem is different. Every science park we have around the UK is different because of where it started from, whether it had an AZ down the road, or whether it had great universities, hospitals, or whatever. And we always knew with Nottingham, for example, that we couldn't be a Cambridge, and we didn't want to be a Cambridge. There were different skill sets, as you say. But the really interesting thing I've done, and looked over the years, is if you look at the CROs in Nottingham, most of them are working with all the companies in the Golden Triangle. So actually it is joined up. They feed off each other. One can't do the work without each other. As for the branding of the Northern Powerhouse and Midlands Engine, I think in some respects they've been really positive because it has brought different groups together, looking at the transport systems, for example, in the north, looking at, health, economics of the north, looking at investment, etc. But they are brands, and I think, we can get stuck. We're an island, and sometimes we have that island mentality, and it's, nobody cares really, whether we're in Nottingham or Glasgow or the centre of Cambridge. It's where are you going to get the best talent? Where, are you going to get the best people from? Where are you going to be able to, grow? And so, I do think we have to be careful with that. Every region is uniquely different, size, maturity, expertise, but I do think the recipes for success remain unchanged. My mentor, Martino Picardo, is in this room, and he's always said it's about people, infrastructure, and money, and the regulatory framework. But I'd also add collaboration into that, actually. It's about people doing things for the greater good of the UK, no matter where you are. Everybody can do their bit. Everybody can accept their strengths and weaknesses. And I think, if you look at some of the funding initiatives, the regional mechanisms, for me, it should include a condition of collaboration, that you have to collaborate with another region. And that's the only way that I think we truly become, a super cluster that could, put us on the international stage.
That's a great idea. Agreed.
So, Claire, come on, stand up. Have you seen Claire's diamonds on her shoes? she has the best shoes
I've given it
in the
away.
conference. She always does. She always outbids
Don't make me
everybody.
stand in them.
But look at that, So you've got your diamonds. I've got my gold buttons. So what do you think? Are diamonds better than gold?
Well, I think that we can't do this on our own either as regions or collectives of companies. As I said earlier, there's a lot of innovation that's coming out of London, out of Oxford, out of Cambridge, but no medicines get developed without the CRO and without the CDMO services. So I'm all for diamonds, the strength and the structure of a diamond. They're more valuable than gold, and there they are, a girl's best friend. So I'm all for it.
Thanks, the two of you, for sharing that. As you were talking, it reminded me of Genesis years ago when we were in the QE2 Centre. I'd got a session of pharma companies presenting about what was on their Christmas list. And a man called Andrew Wood, who was then with Lilly, much wiser than I am for sure. And he said, well, this is what I want. He said, we've got all these different bits of carbon as ideas, people, money. He said, no, and we could put carbon together in various ways. He said, no, do I want to make pencils? Not really. I want to make diamonds. And I think it was that bit of, we have all the attributes to do this as UK. I'm a little bit different place, I guess, in terms of the benefits of these brands like Northern Powerhouse, Midlands Engine, we have an Eastern Powerhouse. And I think they're great when it's about domestic political lobbying to get investment. The trouble is they then translate them into becoming outward-facing brands globally, and that's where I think it fragments the UK story. I think they are vehicles to do your own domestic stuff.
Yeah, they are. And I think that the UK life science industry is the only industry that can get the UK off its arse at the minute. The political situation is awful. I think that a lot of this pressure to create more space and more infrastructure is going on to the property players. You can't do it on your own. The investors can't do it on their own. There needs to be an environment in which we can succeed. So we need to lobby the government as a whole, whether that's a diamond, super clusters, Midlands Engine, Northern Powerhouse, Invest in. I don't mind who it is, but we need to go with a collective voice because we are the #1 in Europe. We are world leaders for life sciences. Let's not lose the talent that we have. Let's not lose the companies that we have. We're already being touted to move elsewhere, where perhaps the corporation tax would be good and the access to talent would also be excellent. So let's keep people here. Let's retain.
And actually,
Let's grow.
that provides me with a really, so I didn't even set this up, but this is a really good link into the next panel that's going to follow you, because you've mentioned government. And the final panel is going to be about the anatomy of leadership. And, you know, they've given us such great examples to learn from of late. Not. So thank you very much, ladies. And we're saying